My name is Caleb Norris, 36, and I worked at Stellar Point Logistics, a supply chain software firm based in Columbus, Ohio. 6 years. That's how long I gave that company my full attention, energy, and weekends. I was hired as a systems analyst, but quickly became the backbone of our custom logistics solutions. My projects helped reduce shipping errors by 40%, improved warehouse sync times across 6 states, and saved our top client over $3.2 million in the past fiscal year. I never missed a deadline. I never said no to an emergency meeting. I never complained about the outdated hardware or the fact that my department didn't even have a proper coffee machine. I just worked. My boss, Derek Shelton, was a numbers guy. Mid-40s, always in slacks and button-ups a size too tight, and perpetually reminding us that margins mattered more than moods. He praised me during performance reviews with phrases like, "Can't lose a guy like you," but somehow always followed it up with, "Let's wait until Q3 to revisit compensation. We're in optimization mode." Optimization mode. That was his corporate speak for no. I watched younger hires pass me by. I saw people with fewer responsibilities get raises. When I asked for reclassification into a senior position last fall, Derek replied, "You're indispensable, Caleb, but titles don't define leadership. Your impact already speaks volumes." But volumes didn't pay the mortgage. When I asked again 6 months ladder-armed with metrics, peer feedback, and industry comparison, she smiled like a man humoring a child. "You're doing great work. Let's talk next budget cycle." 6 years. Same chair, same pay. What finally pushed me over wasn't Derek. It was watching Haley, our newest team member, get a bonus after fixing a back-end bug I found. She thanked me during the team meeting. Derek didn't even look in my direction. That night, I opened my resume file for the first time in years. I stared at the blinking cursor, fingers frozen for a while. Then I started typing, updating, rewriting, reclaiming. By the weekend, I had 3 interviews lined up with a firm out in Denver that specialized in freight optimization, another in Chicago, and a third right here in Columbus. Riverton Dynamics. I took a personal day that Friday to meet with Riverton's VP of Operations. It was casual, conversational, and ended with something I hadn't heard in years. "You're underpaid, and we'd like to change that." I didn't sign anything. I didn't accept yet. I just left with a promise to think about it. The next Monday, I returned to work. Quiet, focused. I hadn't told anyone, but someone did. By Wednesday morning, Derek called me into his office. He was holding a printed email. His face didn't show anger, just disappointment, like I'd broken some unspoken rule of loyalty. "You interviewed elsewhere?" he asked flatly. I didn't deny it. "I've been exploring opportunities, yes." He leaned back in his chair, let out a slow breath. "After everything this company's given you?" The irony nearly made me laugh. What it gave me was 6 years of being ignored, underpaid, and overused. But I didn't say that. I just said, "I gave this company 6 years. I think that's enough to earn the right to look." That's when he said it. "This feels like a betrayal, Caleb. If you're not fully committed, I can't have you here. I'm going to terminate your access and have it escort you out." I stood there, stunned. No warning, no conversation. Just out. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even flinch. I smiled, offered a firm handshake, and said, "Good luck, Derek." Then I left with nothing but a backpack, my dignity and the knowledge that I'd been loyal far longer than they ever deserved. What I didn't know then was just how fast Derek would regret it. The elevator ride down from the 6th floor felt like an exhale. For 6 years, I had ridden that elevator up every morning sometimes before sunrise, coffee in hand, deadlines on my back. But that Friday, when the security guard tapped my shoulder and handed me a cardboard box, it was like someone had cut the cord to a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. I didn't feel anger. Not really. I felt clarity. Outside, the Ohio sky was gray and spitting rain-typical Columbus spring. I sat in my old Toyota Camry in the parking lot, the windshield wipers working half-heartedly, the cardboard box in the passenger seat full of half-used notebooks, a coffee-stained keyboard, and a framed photo of me and my dad at my college graduation. I turned off the car and just sat for a moment. My phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from Ariel Brand, the VP of Operations at Riverton Dynamics, the company I'd met with days earlier. "Hi, Caleb. Just following up on our conversation from Friday. The team was really impressed. We'd like to formally offer you the lead systems architect role. Full benefits, relocation if needed, though I believe you're local. The offer is attached via email. Feel free to call if you have questions. We hope to have you on board soon." I didn't check the email right away. I just stared at the dashboard, half laughing to myself. Fired in the morning. Offered a better job by lunch. Corporate karma had a funny sense of timing. When I got home, I didn't tell anyone right away. My sister called to check in. I told her everything was fine. My neighbor asked if I was finally taking a vacation. I smiled and nodded. I opened the offer from Riverton that evening. The numbers nearly made me choke on my reheated burrito. 132, zero base salary. That was a 38% increase over what I was making at Stellar Point. That wasn't even including quarterly bonuses, stock options, and a $7,500 sign-on bonus. Riverton didn't just offer money. They offered dignity, a professional development stipend, clear promotion tracks, transparent pay bands. The kind of structure Derek always dismissed as startup fluff. I called Ariel the next morning and accepted. She sounded genuinely excited. That's fantastic news, Caleb. Let's make this transition smooth. HR will send paperwork by Monday, and we'll schedule orientation next week. Ohand, our CTO, Matt, would love to grab coffee with you. He's curious about your logistics work with Larkin's distribution. Says he read one of your old white papers. I hadn't felt pride in months. Maybe longer. But in that moment, it crept back in. By Tuesday morning, I was sitting in a sunlit coffee shop downtown with Matt Ellis, Riverton's CTO. He was in his late 30s, relaxed in posture, but sharp in conversation. No ego, just enthusiasm and curiosity. You basically restructured Larkin's entire back-end pipeline in under 6 months? He asked between sips of cold brew. I nodded. Their inventory system was fragmented across 3 platforms. We unified it under a single dashboard and automated vendor syncs. Saved them about $900 K annually in missed shipments and delays. Matt grinned. And your boss at Stellar Point let you walk away? Not exactly, let more like shoved, I replied with a shrug. Matt shook his head. Companies like that build themselves on the backs of talent they don't know how to keep. We've got different plans here. We want you leading the FreightLink transition project. Big stakes. National rollout. And I want your name on it. It hit me then I wasn't just being hired. I was being trusted. Meanwhile, news traveled fast in Columbus. By Friday, I received a text from Mark Benson, a former teammate at Stellar Point. Hey man, heard what happened. Derek told the team you left abruptly, but people are calling BS. Everyone knows he forced you out. Also, Trilix canceled their renewal. They're pissed you're not on the account anymore. Trilix was a $2.4 million client. I had been their sole point of contact for 2 years. Apparently, I was more valuable than Derek realized. I didn't gloat, but I did smile. Later that weekend, Mark called. I don't know what Derek was thinking, he said. Since you left, the dev team's been scrambling. Haley's drowning in backlog. Everyone's demoralized. Clients are complaining. And get this, rumor is that the CFO is questioning Derek's decision to fire you. I stayed silent for a second, then said, funny how silence and loyalty were what kept me around, and now my absence speaks louder than all of it. Exactly, Mark agreed. You did the work of 3 people and never got credit. Now they're paying the price. Monday morning arrived like a fresh breeze. I walked into Riverton's open concept workspace, met my new team, and dove into onboarding. Everyone was welcoming, curious, eager to share. No office politics, no hushed whispering. By Wednesday, I was already leading my first strategy session for the FreightLink rollout. On Thursday, Ariel dropped by my desk with a smirk. You'll like this. Trilix's VP reached out, directly asked if you'd be open to consulting independently if we won the account. Apparently, they're looking to shift all tech support to Riverton. I blinked. They want to follow me? They said, and I quote, we trusted Caleb. We don't trust whoever Stellar Point assigns next. I laughed, not out of pride but relief. The truth had finally caught up to my effort. That weekend, I ran into Derek by accident. It was at a tech mixer downtown. I hadn't seen him in weeks. He was by the bar, talking with someone from another logistics firm, wearing the same blue blazer he always wore for events. He spotted me before I could turn away. Caleb, he said, voice tight. Didn't expect to see you here. Likewise, I replied. There was a long pause before he said, I hear you landed at Riverton. Good for you. Thanks. I'm leading FreightLink now, I said simply. Derek blinked. He knew what that meant. FreightLink had been Stellar Point's dream account for years, but now it was mine. Well, he muttered, straightening his jacket, just know there are no hard feelings. I smiled. Good, I said, because I don't carry any. Then I turned and walked away. By the time I reached my car, my heart was pounding not with rage or fear, but with relief. I had done the thing I was scared to do for years. I walked away. And it turns out, that's exactly when everything started to finally move forward. 2 weeks into my role at Riverton Dynamics, I stopped checking the time every hour. At Stellar Point, I used to stare at the clock like it owed me something, waiting for 5 p.m., waiting for next quarter, waiting for someone to finally notice. Now, I was leading meetings where my name was on the agenda. My ideas didn't just get heard, they got implemented. The FreightLink transition project had launched in full swing. I was managing a cross-functional team of 14 people, including software engineers, logistics analysts, and a UX designer from Denver who used to work for FedEx's internal ops team. Everyone was sharp. No ego. No corporate chain of command theatrics. Just collaboration. I was in my element. Ariel checked in regularly, but never micromanaged. She'd often swing by with a coffee and say, "Anything I can clear out of your way." I couldn't believe that was something managers actually said. But while my new world was blooming, whispers from my old one kept floating in. That Friday afternoon, I got lunch with Mark Benson, my former teammate from Stellar Point. He looked different, tense, tired, and 10 pounds lighter. "I'm not gonna lie," he said, digging into his sandwich. "The place is on fire." "Still?" I asked. "Worse. Trilix isn't renewing. They're officially out. And now Hembry Freight is on the fence. They asked me on a call last week why you're no longer managing their integration. I had to pretend I didn't know. Hembry was a massive account worth close to $3 million annually. And Derek?" I asked. "Let's just say he's under review. The CFO is pissed. He tried to convince them that you were planning to jump ship anyway and weren't being loyal." I raised an eyebrow. "That's rich." "I know," Mark said. "Everyone knows you got pushed." I stirred my drink, thinking, "Honestly, I don't even care what Derek says anymore," I said. "But it's good to know the truth caught up." Mark leaned forward. "You know what's wild? HR's been quietly reaching out to a few of us asking if we'd consider returning to previous salary levels if we took on additional responsibilities. Meanwhile, Haley's been crying in the break room twice this week. She's drowning." I felt a pang of sympathy, but not enough to forget the months I spent watching Haley take credit for my work under Derek's approval. "Let me guess," I said. "No pay raise for the extra workload." Mark laughed bitterly. "You already know." That weekend, I received an email that made me sit up. Subject: Freelance consultation inquiry. It was from Trilix's director of logistics, someone I'd worked closely with for nearly 2 years. They wanted to know if I'd be open to a short-term consulting contract to help transition their systems away from Stellar Point. Not just any transition, they wanted to rebuild their backend using Riverton's software. I forwarded the email to Ariel immediately, asking if it was appropriate to get involved. She replied within 10 minutes. "Absolutely. If they want to come over to us, we'll support the transition, and I want you to lead it. We'll revise your scope and adjust compensation accordingly. Let's talk Monday." It was surreal. Just weeks earlier, I was sitting in a gray cubicle, begging for basic recognition. Now, I was being offered project leadership and a potential bonus because of the loyalty I'd built with clients' loyalty that Stellar Point had squandered. Monday morning, I sat in Riverton's executive meeting room with Ariel, Matt, the CTO, and 2 senior account managers. We drafted a proposal to onboard Trilix officially: timeline, scope, pricing. The contract was worth $4.2 million over 36 months. At the end of the meeting, Ariel looked at me and said, "This is yours, Caleb. You brought them here." Matt added, "I know your title says lead architect, but after this, we'll be talking about something bigger." I didn't respond right away. I was still processing what it meant to be fully valued. It wasn't just about money or title, it was about impact, trust, and finally feeling like I belonged somewhere that didn't treat me like a line item on a spreadsheet. 2 days later, I got a LinkedIn message that made my stomach tighten. From Derek Shelton. Message: "Caleb, I'd appreciate a quick call if you're available. There are a few things we should clear up." I didn't reply. 15 minutes later, a text buzzed in. "I didn't handle your departure the right way. I'd like to talk as professionals." I showed the message to Ariel. She laughed. "You don't owe him anything, but if you do take the call, make sure it's on your terms." I agreed to a Zoom call the next day, out of curiosity more than anything. He logged in looking tired, dark circles under his eyes, blazer over a wrinkled shirt. "Caleb," he began with that same practiced voice I'd heard for 6 years. "I know things didn't end well. That was never my intention." I stayed quiet. He continued. The company's been in a tough spot since you left. I... I should have done more to retain you. I nodded once. I heard Trilix reached out to Riverton, he added carefully. They've been one of our longest, standing clients. If there's any chance we can discuss a mutual arrangement. I stopped him. Derek, I appreciate the apology, but here's the truth. I gave you 6 years. You gave me excuses. You pushed me out the door and called it betrayal. Now the clients you ignored see me. You don't get to reclaim that trust retroactively. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded slowly. Best of luck, Caleb, he said at last. You too, I replied. You're going to need it. I closed the call. It was over. That Friday, at Riverton, Ariel announced in the weekly team huddle, we've officially signed Trilix. Caleb will be leading the system migration and a new client-facing initiative moving forward. Exceptional work. Everyone applauded. Jason, one of our engineers, grinned and said, looks like someone's having the last laugh. But I wasn't laughing. I was simply done waiting to be respected. The Monday morning after Riverton secured the Trilix contract felt different. The air in the office carried that electric charge only big wins create when the company senses a shift in momentum. I arrived to find a congratulatory email from the CEO herself, highlighting my leadership in bringing the account over and kickstarting the migration plan ahead of schedule. Just 3 months ago, I was invisible. Now, I was leading one of the most important transitions Riverton had taken on in the past year. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Migrating Trilix's infrastructure from Stellar Point to Riverton would be a massive undertaking. Their logistics tech stack was outdated, riddled with legacy scripts patched over the years, most of them held together with digital duct tape. And worse, we had to do it while they were still live. No downtime allowed. It was the kind of challenge that excited me. The first few days were spent mapping out data transfer protocols, planning staging environments, and building a skeleton team of engineers and QA leads. I pulled in Sonia, a DevOps engineer with a talent for smoothing chaos, and Ravi, one of our newer back-end guys who'd earned my respect after solving a data sync issue in under 20 minutes. On Wednesday, I got on a kickoff call with Trilix's VP of Operations, Erica McNeil, and her tech lead, Jeremy Collins. Erica didn't waste time. We're trusting you, Caleb. I told our board this entire migration rests on your leadership. If this goes well, we'll be expanding our contract with Riverton by the end of Q3. I didn't blink. We'll deliver, I said confidently. And I'll personally ensure you're informed every step of the way. Meanwhile, the fallout at Stellar Point was becoming public. I didn't have to dig for updates. They came to me. Mark texted me on Thursday evening. Internal email just dropped. CFO is officially reviewing all account losses from the last 6 months. Derek's name came up a lot. I raised an eyebrow. Not surprising, but quicker than I expected. Later that night, I got a message from Haley, the same junior dev who once got credit for work I'd done. Hi, Caleb. I know we didn't talk much before, but I just wanted to say you didn't deserve how you were treated. I've been stuck trying to manage 2 major accounts alone since you left. And Derek keeps dumping blame on everyone but himself. If there's ever a chance to work together again, at Riverton or anywhere, I'd be honored. I stared at the message for a long while. Resentment had been my instinct for months. But seeing Haley now, overwhelmed and unsupported, I realized something. The problem was never the employees. It was the system that used us until we burned out. I replied, "Thank you, Haley. That means more than you know. If something opens up, I'll let you know." Back at Riverton, my team was in full sprint mode. We were in week 2 of the Trilix project, and the first batch of staging servers were already live. Data migration had started, small and controlled like threading a needle through traffic. One afternoon, Erica called me directly. "I thought you'd enjoy this," she said, laughter in her voice. "I just got a desperate email from someone at Stellar Point asking if we'd reconsider renewing with them. He even offered a transition assistance package." I chuckled. "Let me guess, Derek?" She paused. "Number someone named Greg Martin, their new interim director." He blinked. "Derek's out?" "Looks like it. Greg said they're undergoing leadership changes. Told me they regretted how things unfolded with you." I leaned back in my chair. Derek was gone. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt inevitable. When you spend years building success off the backs of others while offering nothing in return, eventually the floor gives out. And when it did, he was the first to fall through. By the end of the month, Trilix's new platform was fully staged, and we prepared for final system validation. Erica's team ran trial shipments through our simulation environment, and the results were even better than we'd predicted: improved processing speed by 45%, and fulfillment accuracy up 30%. Ariel pulled me into a meeting the next morning. Trilix is thrilled. They're greenlighting the expansion next quarter. You've just secured a deal that may hit $7 million by year's end. I nodded slowly, the weight of it sinking in. That's a lot of faith. And well earned, she said, her tone warm. We want to move you into a director role by summer. You'd lead all enterprise onboarding going forward. I looked at her, almost disbelieving. I'm not trying to fast-track anything, I said. I just want to do it right. She smiled. That's why you'll do it better than anyone else. That weekend, I visited my parents for the first time in months. My dad grilled steaks, while Mom asked the usual concerned question show work was, how my apartment was, if I was eating actual vegetables. At the dinner table, I finally told them the full story how I'd been let go, how I'd landed at Riverton, how I'd led the project that brought in a multi-million-dollar contract. My dad, a retired warehouse foreman, looked at me quietly. Didn't I always tell you to stay loyal to the company? You did, I replied. But they weren't loyal to you, were they? He asked, more statement than question. No, I said. They weren't. He nodded, eyes fixed on his plate. Then I guess I was wrong about that. It was the closest he'd ever come to saying he was proud. A few weeks later, I got another message. This time, from Greg Martin, Derek's interim replacement. Caleb, I know you've moved on, but I wanted to reach out. I've been reviewing past performance data and client feedback, and it's clear you were a major asset to this company. I can't change what happened, but if you're ever open to consulting with us in the future, I'd love to talk. I stared at the message, the irony so thick it could have cracked my screen. I thought about it for a while. Then, I deleted it. 3 months into my new role at Riverton Dynamics, I was finally doing the one thing I'd always wanted but had never been trusted to do: build a team from the ground up. After the success of the Trilix transition, Ariel sat me down and said, "We're moving forward with the new enterprise onboarding division, and we want you to lead it." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a vote of confidence. By June, my new title was official: Director of Enterprise Systems Integration. I now oversaw not just FreightLink and Trilix, but a half dozen upcoming migrations from competitors, most of which had quietly reached out after seeing our success. It wasn't just about the title or salary bump, though both were generous. It was about ownership. For the first time in my career, I wasn't just a cog in a machine. I was the one designing the gears. The first hire I made was a no-brainer. I emailed Haley. We've got a spot for a senior back-end engineer. No politics. Real pay. Real mentorship. You in? Her response came back in, under 10 minutes. Yes. When do I start? She joined Riverton 2 weeks later, and on her first day, I made sure she wasn't just given a workstation and a map to HR. I walked her around personally, introduced her to the team, and made sure she had lunch with me and Sonia. It wasn't just onboarding, it was welcoming. I didn't realize work could feel this. Normal, she said with a nervous laugh. I smiled. It should have always felt this way. Haley wasn't the only one. Over the next 6 weeks, I built a team of 8. Nate, a DevOps wizard with a sense of humor and a gift for infrastructure as code. Lucia, a UI, UX strategist from San Diego, who somehow turned logistics software into something that didn't look like it was built in 1998. Abdi, a quiet systems architect with an eye for integration bottlenecks no one else saw. Marissa, a product manager who knew how to speak client and engineer fluently. I didn't just build a team. I built the team I wish I'd had back at Stellar Point. Diverse, collaborative, no hidden hierarchies, and absolutely no room for the kind of ego-driven micromanaging nonsense that Derek used to thrive on. At our first full team meeting, I wrote something on the whiteboard before anyone spoke. Respect first, clarity always, growth together. Then I turned around and said, these aren't just words, they're non-negotiable. No one gets steamrolled, everyone gets credit. And if anyone feels left behind, we talk. That's how we work here. You could feel the shift in the room. A team is only as strong as the culture you create on day one, and I was determined never to replicate the dysfunction I had come from. Meanwhile, the projects kept coming. Riverton had picked up 2 former Stellar Point clients, Hembry Freight and Axon Pro Logistics, and they specifically requested me as their account lead. They remember you, Ariel said one afternoon. Apparently, you left an impression. What she didn't say, but we both knew, was that Derek's inability to keep good people had become Riverton's greatest recruiting tool. By August, I had tripled the size of my team. We now had 24 employees across 2 offices and 1 remote pod out of Denver. And every week, I spent an hour doing something my old bosses never did. I listened. Sometimes it was a formal one-on-one. Other times it was just chatting during lunch. But I made sure everyone felt like they could speak up without fear. One Thursday afternoon, Haley stopped by my office with a file and a sheepish smile. Hey, I made a few back-end tweaks to the Axon Pro pipeline. Wasn't assigned to me. I just noticed some inefficiencies and figured I'd clean them up. I took the file, looked through it, and smiled. You know, I said, at Stellar Point, you got credit for something I built. Want to hear something funny? She froze. You knew? Of course I knew. Derek handed it to you on purpose. But that's not your fault. She exhaled, visibly relieved. I added, but now? You're building things that no one else could take credit for, even if they tried. She smiled. Thanks for giving me the chance to prove it. But not everything was perfect. One morning, Sonia came to me frustrated. She was working late nights, covering for a junior engineer who kept missing key deadlines and handing in incomplete tasks. Do I coach her or cut her? She asked bluntly. I paused, thinking back to how Derek would have handled it probably, with a warning email followed by passive-aggressive silence. Coach first, I said. One clear conversation, one clear expectation. If she doesn't rise to it, we document and make a call. But we lead with trust. Sonia nodded. All right, just don't want the rest of the team thinking there's no accountability. There is, I replied. But we don't punish failure. We address it. That became a mantra in our team playbook. No fear, just feedback. By September, we were operating like a mini division, and it hadn't gone unnoticed. Riverton's executive board invited me to present at the quarterly strategy summit. I wasn't nervous, I was ready. I didn't prepare fancy slides. I told a story. I told my story. About sitting in a cubicle for 6 years, waiting for a raise that never came. About watching clients walk away when leadership stopped listening. About being let go for doing the one thing that should have been encouraged knowing my worth. Then I talked about now. About what happens when you give people room to grow and the respect they deserve. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then the CEO, a tall, composed woman named Deborah Lynn, stood and said, Thank you, Caleb. That's the kind of leadership we want defining Riverton's future. That night, I walked home from the office under the glow of street lamps, thinking about how far I'd come. Not just in career titles or salary, but in mindset. I wasn't chasing recognition anymore. I was creating environments where others didn't have to chase it either. The company I dreamed of working for, I was helping build it, from the inside out. It had been almost a full year since the morning I was walked out of Stellar Point with nothing but a cardboard box and my dignity intact. Now, I stood before an auditorium of over 200 people at the Tech Forward Midwest Summit in Indianapolis, invited as a guest speaker not just for my work at Riverton, but for something more personal. My story. The theme of the summit was Talent First, the Future of Work, and I'd been asked to give the closing talk. As I stepped up to the mic, the lights softened, the room stilled, and for a moment, I saw myself not as I was now, but as the man sitting in a parking lot 12 months ago, freshly fired for daring to imagine something better. I began with that. I want to talk about what happens when companies treat loyalty like a one-way street. Heads turned. People leaned forward. I didn't need slides. I shared the story how I stayed loyal to a place that stopped caring about people the moment numbers got tight. How I asked for fair pay for years and was answered with delay after delay. And how, the moment I looked for growth elsewhere, I was tossed aside like a threat. Then I told them what happened next. I talked about Riverton, about building a team grounded in mutual respect, about creating a place where voices are heard the first time, not after they walk away. I told them about Haley, about Sonia, about turning clients into believers not just because of the software, but because of the people behind it. And I ended with this. Loyalty is not about how long someone stays. It's about how you treat them while they're there. The companies that survive the future aren't the ones with the best perks or the flashiest logos. They're the ones where people feel seen, valued, and safe enough to grow. The applause didn't erupt. It built slow, thoughtful, and deeply genuine. And when I stepped off stage, the line to speak with me was long. People weren't just inspired. They were relating. One man from Detroit said, "You described my last 5 years." A woman from Minneapolis whispered, "Thank you for saying it out loud. It made me feel like I'm not crazy." The next week, Ariel called me into her office. "You've caused a stir," she said, smiling as she slid a printed email across the desk. "Half a dozen companies want to consult with us on team structure, onboarding, and culture modeling. Your talk hit a nerve in the best way." I blinked. "Are we becoming a model?" Why not? She replied. You didn't just rebuild systems, you rebuilt trust. That afternoon, Riverton's CEO, Deborah Lynn, asked to see me. She didn't waste time. We want to create a culture and leadership council team responsible for protecting the values that made all of this possible. And I want you to chair it. I was quiet for a moment. You sure you want a systems guy leading culture? I asked. She smiled. Exactly because you're a systems guy. Culture is a system. You just happen to understand both. I accepted. Weeks later, I was having coffee with Haley when she looked up from her laptop and said, "Do you ever think about how different things would have been if Stellar Point had just listened?" I nodded slowly. Sometimes. But honestly, if they had, maybe I never would have left, and I wouldn't be here now. She smiled. Then I'm glad they didn't. In October, I got an email from Derek Shelton. I almost deleted it on sight. Subject: long overdue. It read, "Caleb, I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past months. I'm no longer with Stellar Point. Things unraveled faster than I expected. I just wanted to say, you were right about all of it, and I was wrong. I let the wrong things drive my decisions. I valued control more than people. I don't expect anything from this. Just wanted you to hear it from me. Derek." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some things aren't about closure. They're about clarity. I'd already moved on. So had the industry. 6 months later, Stellar Point announced a merger with a larger competitor. The brand was absorbed. The leadership team scattered. Former clients flocked to companies like Riverton, looking not just for software but for people who treated them like partners. Meanwhile, I led Riverton's onboarding of 2 Fortune 500 logistics clients. I mentored new directors. I spoke at 3 more summits. But most importantly, I kept my team grounded. We didn't let success change our values. If anything, it sharpened them. One rainy Saturday morning, I visited my old neighborhood. I parked outside the building that used to house Stellar Point's Columbus office. It was dark now, windows empty, for lease signs in the glass. I got out of the car and stood in the drizzle, hands in pockets, staring at the place where I'd once walked in early, stayed late, and waited too long to be seen. And then I smiled, because I realized something. That building didn't define me. The leaving did. The moment I walked away from what was comfortable but no longer right was the moment I stepped into the life I'd actually been building all along. Not just a better job, a better way.